Good evening and welcome to this evening's Town Centre Management Committee meeting of Biggleswade Town Council. Please note this is a public meeting, it's being live streamed and it's being recorded, so please don't reveal any personal information unless you have a lawful basis for doing so. First item on the agenda, number 1, apologies for absence. I believe there's only one councillor absent today, and that's Councillor Thomas, who has sent his apologies. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest tonight? None, thank you. Item 3, chairman's announcements. I have none. Item 4, public open session. Do we have any members of the public present online, please? Okay, please speak.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I'm concerned about the crime figures, in particular the decline in thefts that have been reported in the summary that's been put together. Throughout Biggleswade, there's been an increase that we've seen in thefts of bikes, and depending on where they are taking place is dependent on where they're being recorded. As most of it's been taken from around the station area, it's getting reported on British Transport Police figures rather than the town council. So the local Bedfordshire Police. So we're not really getting a true representation. Also, we are getting a lot of reports from members of the public that they are finding it extremely difficult to report incidents to the police. So one person was nearly up to 90 minutes on 101 the other weekend, and I know somebody else was 40 minutes this week when they was trying to report something that they had found that would have been caused harm to people if they hadn't actually bothered to take it home in the end.
Okay, that is worrying and certainly something we can consider when we come to the crime statistics later. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's it, thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. And one other member of the public has just entered. Would you like to speak about anything, sir, about items on the agenda?
Oh, hi, good evening.
If you'd like to speak, you can speak about items on the agenda now or at the end of the meeting about anything else. Is there anything on the agenda you would like to speak about?
Yes, please.
Which?
Sorry, my name is Mario Evans. Some of you guys might know me, some of you might not. I'm a local resident, moving from Tottenham to Biggleswade since 2017. I run a small business in town called Jerk Hub, in front of Iceland. Basically, I've been issued with a trading license for weekends, Fridays.
Sorry, can I just stop you a second? Which item on the agenda would you like to speak about? Because you can only speak at this point about items on the agenda.
Yeah, so basically, you guys want to do the Bigs Eat in Biggleswade.
Ah, fantastic. Okay.
The Bigs Eat.
So that's in relation to the market development plan. Okay, thank you. Carry on.
Yes, which is so basically what I'm trying to say is like because I get the trading license permit to operate from on Fridays and Saturdays until 9 p.m. I can get more traders in, so you guys can take advantage, use it as an advantage to bring more traders in to make the market more lively, Biggleswade than a whole. Because I'm mobile, I go around a lot, and most of the towns that are trading, like Hitchin around the surrounding areas, what I realize on Fridays is extremely busy, and when I get back to Biggleswade, it's dead. And Biggleswade is getting so busy now, which we want to keep people in Biggleswade rather than having people leaving Biggleswade going all the way to Hitchin, going all the way to Bedford, going surrounding areas.
Yeah.
When so many people live in Biggleswade, the youngsters got a good good sense of the traders can bring traders in, make the market more like on a Friday evening, Saturday evening to 9 p.m. Get them in. Get the youngsters in to be more community basically I want to see Biggleswade active.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So we can certainly take that into account, and the place shaping manager is here as well, and he can continue that dialogue with you. But certainly, you're very welcome to stay and listen to the discussion that we have on that item. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Any other members of the public? online? I don't think so. No. Okay, thank you very much then. Okay, so that's the end of the first public open session. We do not have an invited speaker, so we can skip over item 5. So that takes us to item 6. Are there any members' questions, please? No members' questions. Okay, so item number 7, minutes and recommendations of meetings. So we're going to run through the minutes from the Town Centre Management Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 19th of July. And we'll take those first for accuracy. And then we'll go through again to see if there are any matters arising. So let me just get to the first page. For accuracy, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. Okay, Councillor Russell. Good spot. Thank you for that. Councillor Woodhead. Brilliant. Any other comments on page 10? No. And page 11. Okay, would someone like to move that with that one change, these are an accurate record? Thank you. Okay, and we'll go through again this time for matters arising. So page 6, page 7, page 8. Councillor Fage.
Yeah, so item, whatever number it is, C, 9C, on the market fees update. I haven't checked the website to see whether it's been updated to reflect this change, but just to say that I suspect that will probably need to change, but also particularly that second bullet point about the number of bookings per organisation, at some point when the market policy is refreshed, that will need to be reflected in it because it isn't currently reflected, I suspect.
Okay, thank you for that. Noted. Anything else on page 8? Page 9? Page 10? Councillor Woodhead and then Councillor Russell.
Will you use their microphones, please?
On 10C, it mentioned about the Warmore maintenance, but also about the missing names from the cenotaph. I have spoken to the British Legion about it, and they're sort of going to come back to me with a bit more research and information. I mean, I don't know whether this is the right point or whether I should have raised it under accuracy, but I think the allegations of missing names is a bit strong. I think there were just concerns or questions. I don't think it was an allegation is quite the right phrase to use in that context, but yeah, we don't have to change it, but it was I think there was a concern that people have been missed off. I don't think it was an allegation necessarily, but I've spoken to Terry and the others at the RBL, and they're going to get back to me. So obviously if I hear anything, I'll let Isaac and others know in due course.
Thank you for following up on that. Councillor Russell.
Sorry, I was going to raise a similar point, and you've got Councillor Woodhead agreed to investigate, and then officers will meet, and I was just going to ask for an update.
Mr. Hussaini, do you have anything to add, or?
Nothing at this point.
Okay, thank you
on that one.
So that seems to be with Councillor Woodhead at the moment. Thank you. Anything else on page 10? No. And then finally, page 11. Okay, that concludes the minutes. So that's items for consideration, and the first one of those is 9A, the market development plan. Per council, I suggest we take reports as read unless there are any changes to the reports this evening. Is everyone comfortable with that? Yep, everyone's nodding. Fantastic. So would anyone like to comment on the proposals on the market development plan, please? Councillor Fage.
So I'll start off then. So I think I like a lot of the thinking behind this, particularly around the Big Eats themed food event. I like the way that this is broken down into short, medium, and long term. There are a few things in here that do jump out at me a little bit though. So, and I'd actually be quite happy to move the recommendations, but one thing that I'm mindful of is around street food heroes, which is mentioned under the short-term part of this report, which I think is it's quite near to the bottom, third line from the bottom of page 13, that we try to establish Big Eat or Big Eats, and then at the same time committing now to retaining street food heroes on the same terms. personally, I really like the idea of us establishing something, particularly on a Thursday when footfall is low. But the feedback from businesses in the town is that bringing in external traders on the first Friday of the month, which is, you know, very shortly after payday, on a Friday, detracts from the footfall. It doesn't benefit those businesses. So I'm personally not comfortable with the current setup that we have with Street Food Heroes. So I'm not saying we have to have that debate tonight, but I would suggest that we don't make that decision now, and let's see if we can make the Big Eats a success, and then we can factor in what other events might like to complement our own hopefully successful one going forward. But I won't move the recommendations yet. I'd like to hear what others say.
Sensible. Thank you. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. I mean, I fully agree with what Councillor Fage says in relation with Street Food Heroes. So I've heard from a number of businesses, hospitality businesses in particular, who are frustrated with Street Food Heroes on that Friday. I think there's also, in terms of, from my understanding, from what I see when Street Food Heroes are on, that they're using our tables and benches, which involves our staff, presumably putting that out and what have you, and being available. So the terms on which we and what we charge Street Food Heroes for that, I think if it was to continue, I think we would need to look at again. But I don't think a Friday evening is the right evening for that sort of event in any case. And I see it as being something that's in direct competition with what we're trying to achieve with the Big Eats, and therefore might not sit right. So I think, yeah, it's probably premature to commit to that at this stage. The other points I made in terms of the medium term and the footfall monitoring, I think it's important that we do footfall monitoring, and I know myself and other members have been calling for that. I think we need a bit more information than just what's in the report, though, at the moment, to go ahead with that. So I think I would suggest that we defer agreement of that particular item on the recommendations until and so we can understand exactly what the system comprises of and how it would work. But broadly speaking, I'm in favour of the principle. And then in terms of some of the long-term aspects, I have a bit of concern around the supporting landlords in filling the vacant units recommendation and the negotiation of reduced rates. I'd like to sort of understand how that works, because usually with a negotiation, it involves giving something to receive something. And so what would we be offering that, or what commitment will we be offering, I don't know, in order to persuade a landlord to do something that an individual business themselves couldn't negotiate. So I'd like to understand that a bit more before really supporting that recommendation. But the other 4 recommendations I'm completely aligned with.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Russell, I wondered whether the Place Shaping Manager wanted to comment on that last recommendation, because I had the same concern. What sort of tangible support would we be able to provide there? Mr. Hussaini?
I think it's early days, but it is along the lines of what the report suggests. So we'd acts as a kind of hub, if you like, for marrying up landlords with prospective tenants and trying to smooth those negotiations to an agreed vision of what we would like to put in terms of retailers and the rest of it, businesses in the centre of town.
Okay, so a facilitation role, essentially.
Yes, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell.
Okay, I've got several comments. The first, which I'd appreciate from the officers, is the second paragraph under short term. Would they like to explain a bit more, because I don't quite understand what that is proposing. On the last paragraph on page 13, I think that increasing an event to fortnightly through as much of the year as possible is rather a lot very quickly, and I think we're being a bit ambitious with some of this. Regarding the medium term and footfall monitoring, I'm surprised Councillor Pullinger didn't ask if it was in the budget, but that was the question that came to my mind. And if not, it needs to be in next year's budget. And this business of landlords, I just don't think that's the town council's role at all. we're setting ourselves up as a sort of estate agent. I don't like that one at all. So I'm very happy to support deferring the footfall monitoring. I wouldn't support the last recommendation at all. And I think we mean to advertise pop-up stalls rather than shops in the market. So I'd suggest that wording needs to change. But I would like to know a little bit more about that second paragraph under short term and quite what officers are proposing. Thank you.
Mr. Lord, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. It's to do with sort of mental health services, social prescribing, with the support of Lisa King. It's sort of that element of community and voluntary as opposed to sort of charitable organisations, if that clears it up.
So the idea is they have a stall on the market square at fairly regular intervals for people to approach them there.
Yeah, and I mean, we could do it like that. We could do it so that every month there's almost a more community focused day in which we bring multiple stalls of that sort of nature into a specific zone within the market, and we advertise that.
My only concern about that, Chairman, would be for some of those services, perhaps people wouldn't like to be seen to be approaching a store. I'm not sure that I would if I got mental health issues or various. So I think it's okay. We should try it, but I do worry about it a bit.
Thank you. Councillor Pullinger, then I'd like to make a few comments from the chair.
So just on that aspect, I think it's, my understanding was it was a bit wider than, I mean, that was an example, I think, that Mr. Lord gave as opposed to the only type of service that might be offered. But for me, things like when we've had days in the square in midweek and things, or on a Sunday, which have been around environmental issues or recycling or whatever, actually, if the market's not full, it would be better, I think, for them to have a section of the market on a Saturday rather than a separate event. And I hope I'm right in understanding that's the sort of thing that we're trying to encourage to be combined with the market rather than doing separately.
Okay, if I could make a couple of comments from the chair then. So firstly, I think it's a great report. Thank you for exploring so many different ideas, and there's a lot of really good ideas in here that I really like. I think the Street Food Heroes comments, I largely agree with Councillor Fage that I've had concerns about the historical operating model, and I think it's very interesting to explore bringing that more in-house, the big eats. But I share the comments that have been made that maybe twice a month is a little ambitious. I think we have to balance the desire to bring people into the town, and doing that on a Thursday rather than a Friday, I think is really positive, because I know a lot of the established fixed premises are concerned that they don't like the competition on what they see as their best night of trade in the month. So I think our role is to try and bring and encourage people into the town, but do that in a way that's complementary with the businesses. And I suggest that perhaps we should start with once a month and see how it goes, to be honest. And then I share some of the concerns that have been made around the last recommendation. I think there could be value in trying to promote Biggleswade as a destination and maybe showcasing the units that are available if we think there's a gap there. But I think we have to be very careful not to go too far. I think it was Councillor Fage first, then Councillor Russell.
Yeah, I was actually going to make a proposal, but I didn't know if Councillor Russell wanted to speak first, so I can factor that in.
Councillor Russell.
I've almost forgotten what I was going to say then. What was your last comment, Chairman?
I think we need to be very careful on that last recommendation, and I support the idea that maybe we showcase the units that are available.
I've remembered what I was going to say now. Sorry to be so silly. I'm going to come back to one of Councillor Fage's favourite phrases about, is this a priority? There is a lot in this report, and I would say that that is not a priority at all and should be put on the back burner for at least 12 months. So I don't know what you're going to propose, Councillor Fage, but I've already proposed that we don't support the landlords thing, that we defer the footfall monitoring, and that we have pop-up stalls rather than shops in the market. Yeah. But I won't make that proposal.
Just before I go to Councillor Fage, one quick question on budget. So there's a reference in here to officers using the existing advertising budget to promote events. What is that budget? How much do we have?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Sorry
to put you on the spot. Councillor Fage, over to you.
Okay, so I think there's a lot. So I think, like I said, I think there's a lot of good work here. Just before I make a proposal, which is broadly similar to what's in front of us, just one thing that I think we need to be really careful of is with the idea of businesses coming on and joining the market, which personally I'm very supportive of. But if we're doing it at no charge, we just need to be aware of potential sensitivities, particularly around conflicts with regular traders potentially as well. So I think the market superintendent needs to play a really prominent sort of mediator role in making sure we get that balance right, because I've no doubt Colin will have some views on that, and we'll know the best way forward. So with that in mind, I'd like to propose just some amendments to the wording, but if I just read it out. So number 1, to advertise pop-up shops and stalls in the market to boost trader presence. Number 2, to propose that we reach out to community and voluntary groups to boost presence, specifically at Saturday and Tuesday markets. Number 3, that we invite local businesses onto the square on a rotation to advertise their business, ensuring that the market superintendent plays a prominent role in that process. Number 4, to pursue the Big Eats. I'm unsure about the Bigs Eat or the Big Eats. I'm just trying to work that out in my mind a little bit, but I think the idea is about a themed food event, and to run the first pilot at the beginning of November and to try to do so monthly. Then I was thinking perhaps on the next one to explore resilient footfall monitoring options for future consideration. It feels like the consensus around the final one, probably we don't need to do that right now. And then I would just add to that we delay a decision on how we proceed with Street Food Heroes from 2023 onwards. So I'd like to make that proposal. Hopefully that's clear.
Okay, would someone like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Pullinger. Any comments on that proposal? Councillor Strachan.
Yes, firstly, is the beginning of November practical for the Big Eats pilot? Because it's a very short time away. I don't know how much work's going to be involved and how much it's already been done in the preliminaries, but there's just 2 weeks effectively to make it work. Now, is that sufficient time, or are we just being overly optimistic or putting too much of a burden on officers, and indeed expecting too much from people to make up a mind to do so at very short notice? But I think we've got to remember that it's not just the market traders that we have to consider. We have to consider our shopkeepers who are paying rent already if they don't own their own shops. And I think that side of it, we're not in the business of organising rent. We're not estate agents. We may have a reputation of being like estate agents, but we're not. We should never be. But I think we've just got to be very cautious that we treat everybody properly and don't overstep our position.
Would officers like to comment on the schedule?
I'd suggest that early to mid-November is viable for a first pilot for this scheme.
Might I suggest that perhaps we don't need to define the principle is being established here, the policy, but the exact date, maybe officers could take offline, because we need to consider promoting the event. And of course, we have the Christmas event on the 25th, so we don't want to run into that. Councillor Russell.
I didn't hear in Councillor Fage's proposal anything about the last recommendation. Are we, was that to defer that?
I just didn't mention it, and not to adopt it at this point. Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Noble though it is, I think, and perhaps there's a role in shepherding potential new businesses towards some of the empty units. I think don't think necessarily that needs a resolution of council if somebody comes to the council with that.
Noted. Any other comments? Councillor Russell.
I'm sorry, but I feel strongly about this, and I don't think it's something that council should be looking at all. And I certainly don't think it's something that officers should do without the support of council. So Councillor Fage's last remark, I can't support. So I would like to defer this for at least 12 months.
Councillor Fage, any comments?
Okay, well, I'll just include that in my proposal then, that the final recommendation is just deferred for 12 months.
Okay. Any other comments? Is the seconder happy with that revision? Okay, let's go to the vote. Who's in favour for the proposal as outlined? That appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much. And could I also ask that the place shaping manager also works with Mario? Sorry, I forgot your second name, and consults with him when you are looking to arrange that first big event. Thank you for being kind enough to come this evening. Okay, let me move on to the next item then. So this is 9B, the Market Square Vision Update. And again, we have a written report which will take us read. Who would like to comment on it first, please? Councillor North.
Well, it's really a clarification. There's a comment here, progress with CBC, the legal freehold transfer of Market Square. I mean, is that actually moving forward? Have they agreed in principle that they will transfer the whole thing to town council, or what is the status of that?
Mr. Hussain?
No, the position is that the paper recommends that for this evening for you to consider that, so that will enable the discussions to commence with CBC.
Follow that up, because I mean, this has been pursued or raised in the past, and CBC have always said that they're not willing to do it. I believe, isn't that the case? So I don't know. I mean, have you any indication at all that they might be willing to reconsider that position?
It's my understanding that the town clerk would like to have the approval to embark and start on the discussions and explore that with CBC.
Okay.
So I guess there's a question, if this committee was to adopt that recommendation, then it would probably need to go to council to be ratified, I think, because I think that would be beyond this committee's scope. Who would like to speak next? Councillor Russell.
The first paragraph under summary on page 16 refers to 2 place shaping reports. Well, I'm very sorry, but Biggleswade Town Centre adopted master plan and strategy is not just a report, it's supplementary planning guidance adopted by Central Bedfordshire. It was put together by the County Council, the District Council, the Town Council and the Chamber of Trade, and it is actually still planning law, although some of it is out of date because of what's happened since. So we may want to review it, and I think it would be a good idea if a group of councillors got together with the officers and reviewed what was still relevant, reviewed what was still the things that we thought we could put to council for agreement. But it is supplementary planning guidance. It's not just a report in the way that the other report is. I notice in the background that we're talking incremental pedestrianisation. I just want to put it on record that I am totally against any pedestrianisation of the Market Square. I think the parking spaces, there are 40 odd on Market Street, are very important for less able people to park and get to the shops. And I would hate to see, I mean, we can close Market Street when we need to. The traffic regulation order allows us to close it at any time we wish to for events. And I would be against any pedestrianisation. And then the second paragraph from the bottom, talking about something being presented at council on the 22nd of November, I cannot see how all this work can be completed in time to present something to council on the 22nd of November. I think that is very much too soon. The recommendations, I can't agree with recommendation 1. I don't think these are the sorts of things that can be done through an informal series of virtual meetings for the 22nd of November. I'm not sure how much time any councillor has got in that short space of time to think about something as important as our vision for the Market Square. And I'm a bit concerned about the pilot shuttle bus idea. We know we should have had a shuttle bus when the retail park was established, and it was never carried through, although it was supposed to be part of the Section 106. There's no doubt that something's needed. But to set up a pilot shuttle bus service next financial year with a marketing and business strategy, I love the ambition, but we are really trying to run before we can walk with a lot of this stuff. We just need to take our time and think it all through carefully. So I wouldn't be able to vote for recommendations 1 or 3 on this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Albone, on the subject of pedestrianisation, that's something that has come up a few times. And when we get to the point where someone makes a recommendation, it might be interesting if we actually took a vote on that and got to a sense of where this committee is on that thorny subject. It might remove some of the ambiguity. Councillor Albone.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk about pedestrianisation. following on from Councillor Russell. What I think it'd be wrong to rule out pedestrianisation totally. One thing that's being suggested is pedestrianisation of the northbound roadway. It's currently a roadway for buses only, although cars do use it quite a lot and park on it. So that would enable the enlargement of the market, more events to be held in the town. So I think that would be a very good idea to pedestrianise that area. It would have knock-on effects in that on market days you still get people parking in particularly the disabled bays and having to drive through that bit because there's no other option available. So the disabled parking bays would need to be looked at, but pedestrianising that bit would be a very good idea, I think. So I wouldn't like to see that ruled out as part of a general sort of veto on pedestrianisation.
Did Councillor Russell just want to come back? Okay, Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. A few comments. So firstly, I'll start with the shuttle bus service. So I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Russell that we're probably trying to run a bit before we can walk on this. I think it would need a full business case before I think we could give any form of approval to go ahead. And I think there's potentially some other things we could look at as options, such as, is there something we can do working with the operators of the 85A bus route to maybe increase the frequency of that and potentially subsidise it if people are doing a short hop from the retail park to the town centre or something. I don't know the details, but there may be opportunities there to work together with them. As it says, the 300 to 600 pound a day, that's a very wide range. Is it 300 or 600? It sort of doubles if it's the latter. So that's my thoughts about the bus service. So I think we sort of need to think a bit more and do a bit more investigation on that before we look to move forward. In terms of the place shaping report and actually the vision for the Market Square as a whole, I think it's something that really needs input from all members. It needs input from others in the community, shop proprietors and basically residents and things as well, eventually, certainly as part of this. I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity at some point, and I don't know what the timing will be for this, to do some form of workshop where we actually brainstorm and work out options and look at them and actually make it an interactive event really for us to develop a strategy rather than having piecemeal virtual meetings here and there or piecemeal things being brought to council. We need to look at the whole thing and we need to dedicate some serious time to it as a whole, I think. And then in terms of the second recommendation, I think I certainly wouldn't be averse to the clerk initiating some of these conversations with CBC. But I think we need to be a bit clear on what the scope is, and I think it really is, as Councillor Knight said, probably something more for council as opposed to this committee to sort of go forward with. A couple of specific comments on that around pedestrianisation. So yeah, I think when we talk about marketplace, I'm not wildly in favour of that. In terms of the northbound part of the bus loop, again, if it was a short term, in the shorter term, maybe pedestrianisation of that wouldn't be the right thing either. It might be as part of the longer term strategy, but actually, is there an opportunity to, in the shorter term, have additional parking there, maybe have electric vehicle charge points there where the bus stops are? There's potentially opportunities, particularly in the short term. And then,
It's not me. Peter
to me off. Okay, thank you. And I think I was coming to the end, but yeah, it just confused me somewhat. Yeah, so that I think that summarises my comments. I'm not going to make a recommendation at this point. I guess I'll let other members.
I think Councillor Fage wants to say something.
So I genuinely, I didn't even mean to press it.
He may not be chairing this meeting,
got
but
a
the
little,
system thinks he
you might
is.
want to change your seat in future, Councillor Pullinger, because whoever normally sits here has far too much power otherwise. Look, this is really difficult, right? Because I joined the council in April 2017, and since then we've gone from workshop to brainstorming to blue sky thinking to incremental ideas versus lots of detail, and it's really hard to bring it all together. And I think this is probably the first time I've seen a paper that attempts to just lay the groundwork for how we proceed with the conversations in a structured way, and even that is refreshing. That said, I think for the time being on the bus service, I think we just need to press pause, because there is definitely an aspiration for it there at some point, but we've got to think we're at risk of doing that in a vacuum, and quite an expensive one, I think, if we're not careful. So in terms of priorities, I think what Councillor Russell has mentioned about the town centre master plan being, I think actually that's something that we haven't looked at for a long time. If it is supplementary planning guidance, that's the one thing that will actually have some clout. And given that it's now 11 years old and things have changed and town centres have changed, habits have changed, new businesses have come to town, we have in various ways, actually probably the best way to do this is similar to the way the report is laying it out, but rather than trying to bring two reports together, just really focusing and almost reopening the conversation around the master plan. And there's no reason why that can't start with officers initiating that in the same way that they're proposing to in the report, but really focusing on that document. I think once we have that, then we can look to proceed with some sort of probably offline forum to look at what some of the potential changes could be, and that would then perhaps open the discussion to some of these sort of 4 points that are being referred to in the second proposal. I think the reason that it's important to sequence it like that and to perhaps wait a little bit on these 4 further points. Yes, we can progress the conversations informally with officers perhaps at central beds. You don't necessarily need council's or the committee's nod to gauge what central beds' view is on them. But in terms of us saying, oh, we definitely want to take on the market square, well, at the moment, the market square isn't as safe as it should be. And if someone falls and breaks their hip over one of those tree roots and we own the market square, where there's blame, there's a claim, and I don't want this council saddled with it. But until we have that whole view of the market square that needs to come from the master plan, then we're probably in a position to formally commit to the second 4 proposals. So I think my proposal is really what's laid out in number 1. But focusing on proposal number 1, that to produce not a place shaping report, but to reopen the conversations around the Biggleswade master plan as it was signed off in 2017, alongside a list of aspirations and an informal series of whatever kind of meetings are needed in order to get that document to a point where we can take some of those conversations forward to central beds and others. Sorry, that's a very long-winded way of making what I hope is a reasonably straightforward.
That was a clear proposal. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Pullinger. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got 3 basic recommendations as I understand it before us. The first one, I think we have got to look at the master plan and strategy from 2011, and I don't think we can look at a place shaping report without actually going into that, for very much the reasons Councillor Russell was explaining earlier, and I think that's got to be the groundwork. I have some trepidation of the suggestion of producing a place shaping report with headings and subheadings to be voted on by members alongside the list of aspirations through an informal series of virtual meetings. I don't think that's transparent. I don't think it's democratic, and I don't think virtual meetings work. Having experienced numerous virtual meetings over the last few years, I find when you've got a large number of people taking part, the only efficient and effective way is to have them in the same room. Now, not everybody's going to be available, but I think we need to be doing it in a much more transparent and open way. I think the theory that we've got to review and update it, but setting short time limits of the 22nd of November is totally and utterly unrealistic, I'm afraid. This is too important to rush. And if we try and do something by the 22nd of November, or even the 22nd of December, it is far too quick. It will not be a good report. So we've got to take our time and make sure we get it right. So I think the principle is we've got to review what we've already got in place, which is a structure, and bring it up to date. And that will take a bit more time than just a month or two.
Thank you. Councillor Russell. Sorry, you hadn't finished. Carry on.
Sorry, because I've got three points.
No, please carry on.
I may. As to the idea of discussions with CBC, I think it's quite appropriate that we do have those discussions to find out what is available. But the idea of actually agreeing that we are prepared to take on an obligation and responsibility, and that the officers should proceed to negotiate that now, without us knowing what they are going to be, is totally wrong. We've got to open the dialogue. We've got to see what's available, and we've got to make sure that it's actually going to be in the best interest of the town to take it over, because I can just see an incredible amount of financial commitment from these, which frankly, we haven't got the budget to play with, to deal with it. So we've got to make sure that we're going to be financially secure on whatever's done, and without taking negotiations. So that part, I think, is comparatively uncontentious in terms of the principle. We need to find it out, but actually implementing it is another thing. As for the pilot shuttle bus, nice idea, but offers to set up a pilot shuttle bus implies that they're actually agreed and we're committing to it today. That, I think, is totally wrong. We need to understand what the finances are, and that possibly we could look at it so that we could include it in the budgeting process in January, but it's not something that we can agree to tonight. So yes, but there's no harm in looking at it. Whether it's the absolute priority is another matter. I'm sure that we've got lots of other things that possibly take precedence, but we definitely do need to make access to the town centre easier so that people can come in and go out. And as the gentleman said earlier, we're losing people out of town on Friday, Saturday evenings. And we want to keep people in Biggleswade, so they're spending their money in Biggleswade and engendering a better Biggleswade community.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
First, to clarify formally that I totally agree with Councillor Alban about the bus loop, and I wasn't including that in my remarks on pedestrianisation. Considering the 4 points at the top of page 17, number 3, progressing the revision of bus routes to exclude Century House, that is a key priority with the transport interchange coming in. The other 3, to my mind, aren't priorities. I've understood from senior people in central Bedfordshire that there is no way that Century House will be transferred to us. So, I mean, it's always worth talking to people, but I don't think that that's going to happen at all. And I think we're going to have to recognise that. And as far as point 1's concerned, I totally agree with Councillor Fage that we wouldn't want to take the Market Square back at the moment with the state it's in and the fact that it hasn't been repaired properly in the last 12 to 15 years. Going back to the town centre master plan, I don't think that we are able ourselves to formally review the town centre master plan, since it is a formal planning document, and it was certainly put together with the support of planning officers at Central Bedfordshire when we did it all those years ago. The other issue is, of course, that we've now got the neighbourhood plan, which has got some things to do with the town centre, but not really the kind of things that are addressed in the master plan. So my mind is going to the fact that at some point we will need to review the neighbourhood plan. I understand that legally we can't review it and have it in place for 2 years. There's a 2-year moratorium once the plan's made, which it's now been made by Central Beds. But could we aim to look at the adopted master plan now and to get our thoughts in order for where we need to be and think about including some of that stuff in a revision of the neighbourhood plan so that it actually becomes formal planning guidance again in a more up-to-date and revised format. And that's why I agree totally with Councillor Strawn that we need to take our time over this and do this properly. And at the moment, we don't want to interfere with what's in the master plan because a lot of it is still relevant, but at the same time, we do need to update it and we need to have this vision of where we need to be in sort of 2025 and onwards in the town centre. That's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So Councillor Fage, do you want to comment on that?
In light of some of those comments, perhaps I could just focus the proposal a little bit more. Sorry, I took quite a long time to get to it in the first place. But so if the proposal were to read something along the lines of that officers engage, town council officers engage with whoever necessary at central beds to express our desire to open conversations about how the master plan might be updated to reflect the changes that we've seen in the town centre, but also new developments such as the neighbourhood plan, etc. And that once that dialogue has started, that officers liaise with the chairman of this committee to decide how we take those conversations forward in a way which is transparent and open and perhaps includes councillors. So that would be proposal 1. And then proposal 2 is that of the four items set out on page 17, that we prioritise progressing the revision of bus routes to exclude the loop around Century House, the northbound loop around Century House, but deprioritise items 1, 2 and 4. But we're happy to gauge Central Beds officers' views on those, but stressing that number 3 is the urgent priority there ahead of all the other 3. And I propose as well that we deprioritise discussions around the shuttle bus and address that in future.
Okay, do we still have a seconder for what's now quite a different proposal, Councillor Pullinger? Councillor Albone, I think.
Yeah, in point 1, which talks about trying undertaking the transfer of the Market Square, it does mention the War Memorial and the Victorian Monument. So I think the War Memorial in particular, we might want to look at if outside the rest of the Market Square, if Central Beds might be willing to transfer that to us, because there are things that we would like to do with it. We constantly have to get permission from CBC to do those. So that might be worth considering as an item outside of the rest of the Market Square.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Woodhead because I suspect he's going to respond to that.
Yeah. No, sorry, it was just a specific point about the War Memorial. My understanding is that the actual memorial itself belongs to Biggleswade Parish and not to Central Beds, because the way they were all set up after the First World War, it's by a local subscription, all the rest of it. So unless anyone's got any proof otherwise that it's actually owned by Central Beds, my understanding it is part of the parish responsibilities, if you see what I mean, because that's the way these war memorials were set about. So we do need to be a bit careful in terms of how some of these things are parceled up. But that is my historic understanding, but unless people have a different understanding, but that was where I would see it.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
On that last point, I think this is something that the solicitors who are looking at capital assets should look at what exactly is registered at the land registry for the Market Square, because I quite agree with Councillors Albone and Woodhead about that particular asset.
Yeah. Would officers know that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I say that I'm not completely happy with what Councillor Fage has proposed as his first proposal, which was talking to CBC, opening conversation about updating the master plan. I suspect that Central Bedfordshire at the moment, the way they've been talking to the town clerk, they would want to take it on and do it completely. I would like to see us deciding what we want with the master plan first and then negotiating with Central Bedfordshire, or as I say, incorporating any changes that we want into a revision of the neighbourhood plan, which may be 2 years away, but it will take a long while to get to where we need to get to. So I'm not very happy about trying to do it as a central beds-led exercise, which is what it sounded to me was being proposed.
If I could just briefly comment, and I'll come to Councillor Bond. So I think I agree, actually. So my sense is it would be helpful if we took a look at the master plan and had the aspiration of creating an informal draft document that reflected our aspirations at the same level as the master plan, so not getting into all of the detail. So we coalesce and agree our position, and then we take that draft that has no legal standing, but could be town council's policy to central beds to form the basis of a start of a conversation.
I think I'll accept that amendment.
I can't repeat that. Councillor Bond.
I too would feel much happier if town council was driving that rather than being waiting for someone else to actually, when they've got other priorities like the local plan. The comment that Councillor Russell made about assets as well. I think we also need to look at the ownership of the water fountain, because that was, I think a lot of money was put, 30,000 was spent in putting it back. I can't remember, a few years ago, wasn't it? So I don't, as to who owns it, I think we probably need that to be sorted, because it was stored, or was it Quince's for ages, wasn't it? It's fighting to recall. It's about 30,000 was spent renovating it. So I doubt it probably actually belongs to CBC in any case.
Councillor Pullinger, just to see if you'll still second the proposal. No, nothing to say. Councillor Strong.
I'm very glad that we seem to have moved to the fact that the town council's taking control of reviewing the master plan rather than leaving it to CBC. We need to know what we want for the town rather than being told what we want for the town. I have some concerns over the legal situation with regard to the ownership of the War Memorial and indeed the fountain. It depends on whether they're movable or immovable, I think, potentially. So I think that's something that should be specifically asked of the legal advisors when they are looking at ownership, because there are occasions where buildings certainly belong to the landlord, even if they're put up by the tenant.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to look to officers just to see if there's a nod that you're happy with the direction we're going in, potentially. And then we'll go to the vote, I think, because there seems quite a lot of alignment in the room. So who's in favour of the proposal as outlined? Unanimous, thank you very much. Okay, that takes us nicely on to item 9C, and we have a written report on the War Memorial.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
There's just a few updates on this one. The signage has actually now been delivered as of 2 days ago. Officers are really pleased with the quality, and I've brought one down. It's in the chamber if you wanted to view it afterwards. Just so you're aware as well, I've consulted with the public realm manager with regards to installation, because we're looking at attaching something onto the stake that makes it a bit more difficult to remove from a sort of vandalism perspective. Officers are just in the process of acquiring plans from CBC to understand the cabling underneath the grass and any water mains before we try and do that installation. But we're obviously urgently looking to get that. Thank you.
Okay, any comments? Councillor Pullinger.
So in light of some of the comments made on the previous item in relation to the ownership of the War Memorial and whether that might be ourselves as the parish or whether it would be the central beds, I think we need to understand that a bit more before pushing on that maintenance aspect that's in recommendation 2. In terms of noting in terms of the 2 recommendations, that's fine, and I agree with the 3rd recommendation. So I'd like to propose that we accept the recommendations.
Do we have a second? We do. Councillor Woodhead, thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Looks like we go straight to the vote. Who's in favour of the recommendations as outlined? Unanimous, thank you. Item 9D, defibrillator. We have another written report. Any updates to it? Okay, any comments on it? Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. I will identify myself as a member in paragraph 2 of the summary. So in terms of the proposed location at Stratton Recreation Ground, I do have some concerns with that location, primarily around security. We do know that in that vicinity there have been instances of drug dealing in the past and social behaviour. There isn't any CCTV and things like that. So I think it would be a target for vandalism and theft essentially if it was located there, which gives me some concern. I'd like to suggest that we wait for a response or look for a response from the NMP stores and post office as an option. Obviously, if we went forward with that option, we would need some form of agreement in place with them in terms of how it was, the asset was maintained and looked after, etc. And we'd have to look into that a bit more. I guess looking the alternative location that I thought of, and again, I'm not sure how feasible this is, especially if we are going to be closing the gates on the cemetery, but maybe the either the Stratton Way Cemetery, if we can get power from lights there, for example, on an external wall, if again there's potential security issues, or the Drove Road Cemetery. But again, making sure we obviously need to get power for the heating for the cabinet as the constraint there. But there are a couple of other potential suggestions for locations. But I would suggest we don't move the recommendation as made for the reasons I've given.
Thank you. Can I just confirm in the written report, when you say at the Stratton Recreation Ground changing rooms, was that to be inside or outside? I assume outside.
Yeah, outside.
Thank you. Councillor North.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I would suggest that the problem with that is that nobody's going to be around most of the time. And likewise, the Stratton Way Cemetery, most of the time people are not there. Surely if it's there, it's got to be in a place where there are people and people can see it, people know it's there if it's needed. And I would suggest if you want it in that sort of area, which makes sense. What about the post office? Put it on the external wall of the post office. Is that in here?
That's like it's in the report.
Oh, right.
That was my suggestion that I made, that's referred to in the report.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, I'm agreeing with it then.
I also think that would be a much better location. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, one good reason for having it in the recreation ground is that's, there are possibilities that it will be needed there for amateur sporting events. That's the kind of that's the kind of incident that could easily occur. So that would, from that point of view, that would be a very good place to have it. I agree that security is an issue, but for a sporting event, it's obviously a good thing to put in place.
Councillor Strong.
I very much echo Councillor Alban's comments. The recreation ground and the changing room wall is the obvious place to have it from a practical and use point of view. But there is the issue of the security and the difficulties there. But it'd be far better placed there for lots of the sporting reasons, and also it is a route between the old and the new town, so it makes an incredible amount of sense to have it there. But equally, I share the reservations and can understand why the shop would be a much better place from a security point of view. But there again, we want to save lives, and I think it would be more effective in saving lives, providing it was respected at the Stratton Recreation Ground.
I wonder if there's a hybrid solution. Would it be possible? So normally the cabinets that defibrillators go in have lock codes. You have to pick up the phone and call a number, but they can be quite exposed. Would it be possible to almost have that lock code on the door to the changing rooms and almost have it inside of the changing rooms? So when the changing rooms are open and the facility's in use, it's accessible readily, but there is some emergency procedure to gain access to it still if they're closed. I don't know if that's workable, but I do worry there is a lot of nighttime activity there. So I think someone was indicating, was it Councillor Fage?
I was going to say, so I think there are other CCTV cameras in town which are not covered by, there are other defibrillators in town that are not covered by CCTV. So there's one at the football ground at Biggleswade United, for example. There's one on Chapel Street, on Chapel Fields, beg your pardon, near on the Methodist Church, which has its fair share of unsavoury characters who pass by occasionally. Not to the church, but down Chapel Fields, etc. People in the church are lovely. So I actually think we need to have good aspirations for Stratton Way. So, and that area of town, yes, the network of paths lend it to a certain extent to the kind of individuals that you wouldn't really want to bump into in the middle of the night, for example. But that said, we're doing a review of our assets. We certainly are going to come to a view as to what Stratton Way football pitch will look like in the future, perhaps some improvements around the play area provision there as well, because we've got an ongoing project about that. So, you know, to my mind, I'd be comfortable putting it at Stratton Way, given that it is far more likely to be used than I think it would be on the side of the post office. So I think we have a proposal and it's been seconded, but if that were to fall, I'd move the recommendation as it's set out.
Okay, any other comments then before we have a vote on the first? Okay. Okay, it sounded like one, but I think you're right, it wasn't formally seconded. Any other comments then? Councillor Russell.
Just to add to the security, we could have security lights, the ones that are only on when there's movement, so as not to disturb the residents nearby, but it's just an extra little deterrent and that wouldn't cost a lot.
Councillor Strong.
Just on that point, the security lights might be quite useful at night if somebody actually wanting to use it, because they might be able to see what they're doing.
Yes, that's true.
Certainly that path along the changing rooms, there is very little lighting along there. It's pitch black at night. Okay, would someone like to make a proposal? Councillor Page.
Move the recommendation that we agree for a new defibrillator to be installed at the Stratton Way Recreation Ground changing rooms.
Okay.
Adding in appropriate lighting for the reasons that Councillor Strong and I have suggested.
Adding in appropriate lighting for the reason that Councillor Russell and Councillor Strong.
I'm guessing Councillor Russell maybe willing to second that.
But we do know that, and just to caveat, I think we know that this is this is sort of step one in something that will be an improvement to an asset over time, I think. And so we need to start, you know, setting our eyes to new horizons when we look at some of the areas of town that we're responsible for.
Maybe I would also suggest when looking at it, is there a range of different types of security level in the enclosure? Can we look at a high security enclosure if such a thing exists? Okay, everyone happy with that? Should we take a vote on that then, please? Who's in favour of the proposal as outlined? Okay, that's certainly got through. Thank you. Okay, 9D, our first oral update of the evening from the Place Shaping Manager on the King's coronation, which is going to occur on Saturday, the 6th of May.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a very brief oral update. Just officers wanted to open up conversation to committee members on their thoughts on how the council should proceed to celebrate the King's coronation. As the Chairman said, it's on Saturday, the 6th of May. And the Royal website currently doesn't confirm any further details, but they will be released in due course. Suggestions that the Town Council draws from some of the elements that we had in the Platinum Jubilee, but this time we obviously have the premises licence, so that wouldn't be an issue. Thank you.
So it would be good to have a discussion around aspirations and how we may move forward on planning that, given, I guess, every small town in the country will be having similar plans. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So I absolutely think we need to do something to mark the coronation, but I think it's a very difficult situation to be in because we don't know what the guidance might be and what whether there might be any expectations on us, whether there might be specific things that we're encouraged to do at this stage. So I think it's probably worthwhile at this stage having some options of things that we might want to do and ideas about how we might go about them. But I think it's probably premature to commit to anything at this stage until we do get some guidance elsewhere. I think I obviously wasn't around at the last coronation, but my understanding is that the done thing then was for everyone to go out and buy a television because they didn't already have one. But obviously things have moved on somewhat from that. So I think we absolutely should think of some ideas to investigate how we might do them, but I'd guard against committing to anything until we get more guidance.
Councillor Woodhead.
Thank you. Just to add a few more thoughts to the mix. Well, we have the date of the coronation on the Saturday. I'm almost certain there's going to be a bank holiday in addition to that at some point, whether that's going to be the Friday or the Monday. Obviously, we don't know that yet, but that we need to factor what days around the coronation we could do in the planning. I mean, for example, we could have an event on the day of the coronation itself, and then some sort of street party the day after, or 2 days later, or something like that. So it's whether we want a series of events like we did for the Jubilee as well, just to sort of think about that. You know, one idea might be a big screen thing that would be easier to do than obviously it was done during the Jubilee, because it was multiple events, whereas this will be at least one event in terms of the actual coronation itself. So that's one thought. But yeah, I mean, we're still waiting information, aren't we? But I do think we need to get things, get some ideas down, because when things are confirmed, you know, if we want to make any commitment stuff, they're going to be booked up, whatever it might be. AV or whatever it might be that we want to do pretty quickly, because everyone else would want to do the same thing. So we need to move fast once we've decided what we want to do.
Thank you. So I know TCM does not meet very often, so we might want to consider whether we need a working group or something like it, dare I utter the words, to try to get together some plans to take to council. Councillor Strong.
I think very much on that basis, I think we should be supporting it and doing something to mark the occasion. Because hopefully it might be the only one in a lot of our lifetimes. Because in that respect, may I suggest that we should actually be asking the officers to keep an eye on it, and as matters progress, report to full council with a view to going forward. I like the idea that Councillor Woodhead is thinking of buying just one big screen rather than hundreds of small television sets for the occasion. So I think that's could be potentially an excellent idea. But I think really, it's not when it happens or when we get in more information. I don't think we should be hamstrung by this committee looking at it, and I think it should be coming to council for some recommendations as to what to consider, and if necessary, then a working group could be set up. But let's not jump the gun on that.
Councillor Russell.
I was smiling at what Councillor Pullen just said, because I think you'll find that very few people had televisions, and neighbours were piling into the house that had the television. I think we could consider a large screen, as has happened on other events recently. But I think we need to be careful that apart from a large screen where people could get together and watch the coronation on that screen, it would be silly to have an event at the same time as the coronation, because everybody will be glued to their television sets in the way that they were a few weeks ago. So I just think we need to find out whether there's going to be a bank holiday, and we need to think about the best time to put something on. And at the moment, we have so little detail of what might be happening that it's quite difficult. But I think it's quite right that the officers have raised the issue tonight.
Okay, so we're going in the direction of essentially waiting for guidance, then officers put together some proposals and bring that to council. Councillor Fage.
This all seems sensible, but I think we could pre-book the cherry picker if we don't already, assuming we've held on to the bunting. I know Place Shaping Manager did a fine job up there last time, putting all the bunting up. So I'm glad at least it's serving another purpose soon, because I think actually the bunting on the square worked brilliantly for the Jubilee, and if we can put it to use again, assuming it's in a box somewhere at the depot, then I think we should do that.
Okay, would someone like to make a proposal? Councillor Strong.
That the officers be instructed to report back to full council as and when information becomes available, with a view to this council supporting the event in the best way possible.
Everyone happy with that? Yep, okay, we'll take that. Thank you. Okay, was that the last of the items for consideration? So now we move on to number 10, items for information, bus routes, for members to receive an oral update from the Place Shaping Manager, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So officers emailed CBC on the 25th of April with the agreed bus routes proposal, and a reply was received stating it would be raised internally for consideration, with a view to develop as a scheme for the Highways Capital Programme. Verbally, the idea was supported by CBC officers, but the questionable part was around the location of the bus stops and the feasibility of those on specific parts of the high street. So we've been told now that it will be put forward onto the Highways Capital Programme, which will commence in the new financial year. It couldn't be completed any sooner due to a lack of resource in CBC, with the feasibility studies around the routes and the bus stop locations taking an estimated 3 months to complete. Officers are cognizant of the need to revise bus routes with the interchange happening, and obviously it does make perfect sense for BTC's proposal to be considered alongside this. And this was raised to CBC officers, but they refused for the same reasons around lack of resource. This view was also reiterated by a CBC officer last week at the Joint Committee.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Russell.
It is very unsatisfactory that it's not being looked at. Central Bedfordshire have known about the transport interchange and the possible effects of that for a very long time. So it's very disappointing that it's being put back to next year. We need to know that the interchange is due to be completed in March. And as we made quite clear at the Joint Committee, we should know for April what the bus routes are going to be, where the buses are going to stand and all the rest of it. Because you keep hearing comments about buses will still stand on the Market Square and all sorts of silly comments. And you think, what was the transport interchange for? So, you know, I've had quite a lot of different conversations with different officers and sort of trying to G things along. And I just find it unacceptable, but I'm not sure how we can progress this further.
It worries me that we're told it's in the budget and plan for next year, but how can you budget for something when you haven't agreed the scope of something? So surely the scope needs to be agreed first, and then the right amount of budget can be made available to make sure it's deliverable. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you. One does wonder about the logic of spending a couple of £1 million on a bus station and terminal, and there being no plan to implement it. It just, I hate to say it, but is it going to be just a big white elephant that's been a load of money's being spent on for very good reasons, but nobody's got the gumption to actually prepare a plan to implement it and make it work? It's absolutely criminal. It's great taxpayers' money that is being spent to provide a service. We want better bus routes. And if it's correct that Central Beds Council are not progressing matters, it is totally and utterly unacceptable. We want people to be able to access the town and the villages and towns around us easily. Bus routes are there. They want sustainable transport. We've been talking, pedestrianisation has been mentioned. We can't pedestrianise if everybody's got to come to the town by car, which they'll have to unless they get their act together over bus routes. So I would like to think that we could urge Central Beds to actually get some plan in place as a matter of urgency.
Okay, so we're all not very happy about the situation. What can this committee specifically do about it? I guess is there a proposal we can have around that? Councillor Cunningham.
So I was going to suggest, can we formally write on behalf of council to Central Bedfordshire, the relevant officers at Central Bedfordshire, and maybe encourage our ward councillors to take this up formally in their position with officers as well. But yeah, essentially formally write to Central Bedfordshire expressing our disappointment in the fact that the progress hasn't been made in this area.
Maybe this committee could ask officers to draft a letter that comes to council next week to be approved potentially.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think it was Councillor Strawn first, then Councillor Russell.
I'd happily second that, but I'd like to add and disappointment and concern, because I think that we're not only disappointed, but we are actually rather worried about it. So I think if that, and I'll happily second it on that basis. Councillor Russell.
Well, the other thing that occurs to me is that we wouldn't normally have anything to do with the Highways Capital Programme at Central Beds. And I would have hoped that the town council would be involved in the planning of this. So perhaps we could add to such letter that we would hope to have engagement with Central Beds over this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, do we have a proposal then?
Yeah, so the proposal was that we write to Central Bedfordshire, or that officers prepare a letter to be approved at council next week, to go to Central Beds to express our disappointment and concern at the lack of planning around the implementation of the transport interchange in regards to bus routes and bus routings, and that, remind me, Councillor Russell, and that the town council would like to be involved in the capital and strategic planning, highways planning in relation to this.
Let's go to Councillor Bond, then Councillor Fage, then we'll see if we have a seconder.
can I ask who you're addressing this to?
I hope you could help us with the necessary senior officer.
A senior officer.
And
relevant
I
senior
think you need
officer.
to also include the portfolio holder.
Yeah. Senior officer and portfolio holder for
So-
high risk.
Councillor Delgado.
Portfolio holder is Councillor Delgado. Can I just,
Councillor Fage.
I don't get me wrong, I am disappointed. I'm also concerned, but we do need to try to, for the sake of Biggleswade, and I know we've tried before, and I know it's getting hard because it feels like it's no one's responsibility, but it now feels that an officer sort of has put their head above the parapet and said, look, there is a way forward. Yes, it's a lot slower than what you wanted, but it looks like there's a conversation to be had. I just wouldn't want to jeopardize that conversation too much with language which is too terse, but I do trust officers to word something which is diplomatic, and if the words disappointed and concerned are used appropriately, I'm sure that can be persuasive, but also they could potentially be used clumsily and misinterpreted, which we just need to be very mindful of.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the proposal?
Yeah, me.
Fantastic. Any further comments before? Any comments before we go to the vote? Right, let's vote on the proposal then. Who's in favour of getting that letter drafted for council? Thank you very much. Sorry, you don't have very long to draft that later, do you, until Thursday? Okay, 10B, which is an oral update on Remembrance Sunday, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So officers, along with councillors Russell and Woodhead, had the final meeting with stakeholders last night for Remembrance Sunday. On the whole, most items for the day are in order and the last bits are just being buttoned off now. Complications surrounding the route and the temporary traffic regulation orders have now been resolved. So this year, the parade will be mustering on Hitchin Street, and then the route will proceed as usual up to the High Street and then back round onto Marketplace. Risk assessments, other paperwork have been approved by SAG as of today, having sent the updated sort of traffic management plan yesterday. My colleague Alison has continued to do a great job in completing all of the administration relating to the service.
Thank you very much. Any comments? None? Then I think we'll note it. Thank you. Moving on to the crime statistics, and I'll just remind people of the comments we had at the beginning from Amanda Cawthorne in relation to bike thefts. Would anyone like to comment on the written report we have, please? Councillor Strong.
Yes, well, I'd like to thank the place shaping manager for having prepared the report. And I think we need these, but I have grave reservations over the accuracy of the crime statistics, because it seems little doubt to me that crimes aren't being reported for a variety of reasons that we've heard. We've heard about the bike thefts and British Transport Police possibly being involved. But I recently represented the council at the Police and Crime Commissioners Parish Conference, and there was a disappointing turnout. But the common theme of the question was the difficulty of reporting crime through either 101 or online. They clearly are major difficulties. You may have read in the press about the delivery and beating crime meeting that the Commissioner challenged the police over. There seems to be a tremendous amount of calls and efforts to contact the police, and the difficulties getting through. I know the case where some drugs were found and a member of the public was trying to get the police to collect them. And it took about 24 to 48 hours before there was a response to the requests and the attempts to contact. There is a major issue with regard to reporting crime because the website is not user-friendly. Police, I felt, were a little bit complacent at the parish conference meeting when that was raised in terms of saying, oh, it'll take time, it's a big issue. But quite frankly, I fear that the crime statistics are far worse than are actually being shown. And Bedfordshire Police needs to get that side of it sorted out sooner rather than later. And I appreciate the difficulties the individual police officers have, and Bedfordshire Police have, because they're grossly underfunded. I think it's about 25% under what it should be. And that's been ongoing for the last 7-8 years at least. And there is a need for funding so that they can do their job better. So it's not fair to blame the individual police There are shortages there, but something needs to happen. Something needs to happen to enable the public to feel that they can contact the police and be responded to. And that, I fear, is not happening at the moment.
Thank you. I wonder whether it's possible to get crime statistics from British Transport Police in relation to Biggleswade Station, which might help to address that concern.
It's worth asking the question, may I suggest?
Okay, any other comments? No. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
No, just thank you for the report and the way that this is laid out. I think we need to remember and keep hold of these, because we do have opportunities to speak to police officers, representatives from the police, whether that's elected or otherwise, the crime commissioner, etc. And we as councillors sometimes, and it's not a criticism, because we know our towns well, we sometimes generalise themes and explain them very well, but these are the numbers that back up those themes, and it demonstrates that what residents are telling us and the crimes that we're seeing and experiencing are backed up by the numbers which are specific to Biggleswade. So I think we need to bring these to the table when we have the opportunity to speak to representatives from the police as well. But that's not necessarily a conversation for tonight. Let's keep this in our back pocket.
That's right. We do meet with one of the local inspectors quite regularly, and I think we should raise these points. And indeed, we have informally discussed the challenges even reporting a crime online, because the online form it seems to be created in such a way that it almost creates a deterrent from reporting the crime. It asks so many questions, really about the victim, well before you get to actually reporting the crime itself. Okay, thank you very much for the report. We'll note that, and maybe we could follow up to see if we can get British Transport Police to share similar information with us, which may help, given that we have a mainline station here. Sorry.
So, Chair, I just wanted to mention that those statistics are actually online. I will circulate the link to.
Thank you for the recording. So apparently the Transport Police statistics are online, so that should be something we can get, which is fantastic. Okay, speaking of crime, let's move on to item 10D, CCTV, where again, thank you, we have a written report from the place shaping manager. Any updates on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So just to clarify that there should be an amendment for the sentence relating to the contract duration. This should be 5 years, not 3. Apologies. BTC will shortly be signing a new novation agreement with a new line installation window of end of December 2022 after email exchanges between CBC, BTC and the CCTV supplier. Just to be completely clear, the indicative annual maintenance revenue costs for year 1 are £17,850. And so officers have requested an additional £2,000 of growth in the next financial year's budget, from 16k to 18k. And just one final comment, the single mobile unit is on order with a different supplier. This should arrive within the next 3 to 4 weeks and will be placed at the Drove Road Cemetery. Officers will move the current mobile camera situated at the White Hart car park when all of the town centre CCTV infrastructure is in place, and this will be moved to Rose Lane car park once the full equipment has been installed.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. It's great to see that this is now moving forward, and we've got a definitive timeline in terms of when it will all be in place. I just wanted to raise a concern, though, in that on the 26th of July, we agreed the funding for this from Town Council should the Section 106 funds not be available, on the basis that the order was then able to be placed. So I'm just concerned and wondering really why the order wasn't placed until the 27th of September. I'd been assured by officers subsequently in August that the order had been placed, and it now seems that it hadn't. So just wondering if you could answer those questions for me.
Is that something officers can comment on, or would you prefer that we spoke to the clerk?
I can have a go, thanks. So, thanks, Chair. So, officers placed an order for a good portion of the equipment on the 23rd of August, and they'd placed a full order for the rest of the equipment was placed on the 22nd of September. Both of these orders were placed using CBC purchase order numbers at the time. Officers had consulted with the town clerk at the time, who agreed that it was best to wait for the funding shortfall to be made up by CBC, which at the time was thought to be reasonable. That's hence the delay at this point.
So I think the challenge is the resolution of council was quite clear that officers should proceed with or without the funding from central beds. Councillor Russell,
I was just going to reinforce what you've just said. I don't think that the clerk has the right to overrule what council has agreed, because council was very concerned about getting this CCTV installed as soon as possible.
Okay, so I think that concern we should take out of this meeting and raise with the clerk. So let's put that to one side if we can. Councillor Strawn.
In view of those comments, which I support fully, can we be assured that it does not cost the town council any additional money by the delay in placing the full order?
The sum of money that the PO covers hasn't changed for a very long time now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lord. Okay, any other comments on this report or the schedule? In terms of the revenue costs, are they broadly in line with what we knew before? There's not really been a change.
Yeah, I initially estimated 20,330, and that's obviously now come down to 17,850.
Okay, thank you. And it would be fantastic if you could keep us updated as the plan becomes more firm. And I'm certainly aware that with ordering telecoms lines, the dates can be quite fluid. But I think regular updates on that as it changes would be appreciated, please. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on. And we have a written report on Christmas. Any updates on that at all, Mr. Lord? Okay, any comments on Christmas? Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. Thank you again for the report, and it's very comprehensive and I think summarises the situation well. I just have a few comments really around the plan on the site map, Appendix B. First is a question regarding the siting of the stage. It shows it as being on the road on the north side of Century House, but with obviously Marketplace being closed and buses still operating, how can that happen if it's a stage in the road? So just think that's something that might need to be looked at. And the second comment was really around the overflow gazebos really onto Station Road. And just whether it might be considered to put them on the other side of the road opposite the shops rather than directly in front of the businesses that are there, just to open it up a little bit more. But otherwise, I'm happy to note the report.
Mr. Lord, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, apologies. On the last one relating to gazebos, I did think that later on. But in terms of the number of applicants, we shouldn't have to use that much of that overflow anyway.
And on the stage placement?
Honestly, I thought that was a placement from last year, but I'll go and look back at that.
It's just onto the pedestrianised area.
Beside what seasons.
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Fage.
Thank you. I'm rather concerned about the overflow into Station Road, as I understand it, because how on earth is that going to work? Because that's going to be taking up the road, as I understand it. What's going to happen to traffic?
It's closed.
Barking. It's going to be. It's
closed as it was last year. Yeah.
It's going to be because we've actually got a closure order on it. Right, thank you for the clarification.
But of course, it would extend the period the closure order really had to be in force for. Councillor Fage.
Yep. Okay. So other than the comment about the stage, so the use of Station Road. So last year we had the market stall. So this road that is on Station Road, sort of running north to south, was on the north side of Market Street. Sort of a bit of a back-to-back, similar to how we lay out the market normally. And my personal view, I was on the stage and could see quite a bit, it felt like it worked quite well. Others may have a different view based on the risk is always we don't know how many people are going to turn up. Others may have a different view on whether or not it felt too crowded. Perhaps using part of Station Road as overflow makes sense, but I would personally like to see more of the north parking bays used first, particularly the bit along the south side of the War Memorial, because there's some quite large bays there and some power circuits as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Woodhead.
Thank you. I just want to say, I think it's a really good report, very thorough, so thank you. I mean, other people have really commented on the distribution of the stalls, but I guess if we are going to have some on Station Road, we need to kind of have enough to draw people up that end of town. Otherwise, there's a danger of having sort of 2 stalls stuck up there and they don't get any customers and we get complaints or whatever. So I think we either need to be aware of the fact we need to keep everyone together because that's where the central portion of the public are going to be, or have more than, say, 2 stalls on the Station Road. There's going to have to be 5, 6, 7, 8 to draw people up. Otherwise it's neither fish nor fowl. So we need to just think about that as we get nearer to the time. Second thing is, I'm really pleased that the Sandy Lions and Rotary Club are helping with the Santa's Grotto. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, I find it sad that people will criticise that the presents were poor last year, because I actually thought they were quite good for £5, the amount that was being charged last year. But I appreciate the fact that with £10, clearly you've got a bit more latitude to get maybe a better present. But hopefully the numbers won't fall off because the price has gone up. Hopefully the numbers of kids who want to do it will still be there. So fingers crossed for that one, and I'll do my best to promote the when that's available to promote that to people as well. So, but otherwise I think it's really good, and let's hope it's a good event.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Just to say that I'm a little bit concerned about using Station Road, and if we have to close the road for longer. I think closing it for large parts of the day as well as the evening might be a little bit difficult. And I'm also wondering where we'll be with the transport interchange, or whether the road will be closed anyway. So I'm just raising issues. I don't have an answer, but I think we need to just think about that.
Okay, Councillor Fage.
Sorry, there was one point I missed. So other than the use of Station Road and using those north side parking bays, just one thing to stress, and I know it's written in the report, but I just really want to stress it, is absolute priority to those regular market traders and those town centre businesses over someone from Letchworth who only comes to Biggleswade once a year, who nobody knows or particularly cares about. Like, to my mind, I want to see Stratton House out there on the town centre and drink, because they have the opportunity to trade outside. I want them to be, generating, having a good day's trade for themselves. Same with the cake stall, etc. To my mind, they take priority. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just really want to stress it, because we're starting to do it well, and I think Christmas is an opportunity to do it, really brilliantly.
Thank you. And I know some of those businesses have confirmed their attendance. Fantastic. Councillor Albone.
Yeah, I just want to say I disagree with Councillor Fage on the use of the north side bays. Last year, I felt it was very, very sort of crammed in, and there's no space for a crowd to sort of like move about, and especially at the War Memorial end, as I think you were suggesting, where it is funneled even more. So I think we would expect a big crowd. We always get a big crowd, and the more space, the better. So keeping the stores on the south side of the Market Square is the right approach, I think. Whether we need any overflow in the Station Road or not, I can't really comment on, because we don't know how many stores we're going to get. But yeah, I wouldn't like to see stores where they were last year, which is, yeah, I think this is a much better layout.
Okay, officers, did you want to respond at all? Most of the comments are around the layout. I think putting the stage in the right place is an easy fix, but in terms of Station Road.
Yeah, in terms of the stage, that's noted, but otherwise I'm happy to do what members see fit for the layout.
What I'm hearing is some concern about having a long closure on Station Road. If the stalls are setting up early in the morning, do we want to shut the road for the whole day? Whereas we're comfortable, I think, shutting it for the peak period for safety, but some concerns over, shutting it from 10 o'clock in the morning or something. Councillor Fage.
I think some of this is about optimising the number of stalls that we have as well. Last year, and it's no fault of our own, because we were getting it started up again after the fallow years with COVID. But the real thing that we did last year, perhaps a little late, was inviting some of the market traders and businesses when we were already at pretty much critical mass, and so ended up squeezing a few in. Actually, if we populate out with the businesses and market traders first, and then the extra, I don't know, 15 to perhaps at most 20 or so extra stalls that come in supplementary to that, provided we know what critical mass is, I don't see a problem with using the north side, at least some of the north side parking bays.
Okay, everyone happy with that? So I think there's some guidance there for officers. Other than that, I think we'll note the report. Thank you. I think that concludes the main agenda, doesn't it? So that takes us to item 11. So the second public open session relating to anything that the committee is responsible for. Would any members of the public like to speak? No, no one's indicating. Okay, thank you. Now we have one exempt item on the agenda. There has been some discussion about whether the discussion needs to be exempt or not. Would someone like to propose that we move to exempt on the car park tender discussion?
I'll propose a move to exempt.
Okay, someone second it? Okay, and a show of hands. Okay, so the majority is in favour of going exempt. So can we end the stream and the recording, please? Thank the members of the public for attending, and unfortunately at this point we need to ask you to leave so we can discuss a commercial matter in a private meeting.